of course, as we said, a group of Gabonese military officers appeared on TV early this morning announcing that they were, quote, putting an end to the current regime and canceling an election that, according to official results, President Ali Bongo won. Now, while announcing the cancellation of the vote results, one of the officers said, quote, all institutions of the republic had been dissolved. The address was read by an officer flanked by a group of a dozen army colonels, members of the elite Republican Guard, regular soldiers, and others. It came moments after the National Election Authority said Bongo had won a third term in Saturday's election with 64.2% of the vote. Bongo, of course, has been in power for 14 years in the oil-rich West African nation.
Au nom du peuple gabonais.
In the name of the people of Gabon and as guarantors of the institutions, we have decided to defend peace by putting an end to the current regime. To this end, the general elections of August 26, 2023 and the truncated results are cancelled. The borders are closed until further notice. All the institutions of the Republic are dissolved.
Toutes les institutions de la République sont dissoutes.
All right, joining us now to discuss further is Kofi Agyei. He's an analyst with SBM Intelligence, which covers security issues around the continent. Isaac, thank you so much for joining us, and good morning to you. So, would we say that we saw this coming, considering what else happened in Burkina Faso, Mali, Niger, or is this more unique to Gabon? There was a failed coup back in 2019 where Bongo's father, fell ill. So how do you see these developments here?
Well, if you can hear me, although we have coups in Mali, Burkina Faso, and then also in Niger, it is important to know that each of these countries have, unique features in terms of reasons why, military leaders would decide to, take power. But if you look at Gabon, for instance, this is a country that had a failed coup somewhere in 2019. So it's always something that you should expect going forward, that once you have a failed coup in 2019, then you should be looking out for certain things like this. In Niger, Burkina Faso, and Mali, there's, this, a complaint about economic challenges. It's the same thing in Gabon, but in Gabon, the baseline factor here is that, military leaders and sections of the people are not happy with the outcome of the just ended, general election, where they have actually termed it as an election that was not transparent, an election that lacked international observation, an election that, internet was actually cut, power, and all of those things. So, although we've had, coups across the Sub-Saharan African region, 8 of them since 2020, it is always important to note that what is happening in Niger is a bit unique, it's a bit different, because it's a country that just went to the polls about 48 hours ago. And, just after that, we've seen a coup, and this has been led by senior military, officers. So there's some sort of connection, and the connection is that almost all of these countries that we are talking about are Francophone countries. All of them, from Mali to Burkina Faso to Niger to Gabon, are all Francophone countries. And that is the dot or the connection that you can draw across these 8 or about 8 coups that have happened in West Africa, West and Central Africa in the past 3 years.
When we look at the economy of Gabon, this is a nation that's blessed with resources, oil-rich. You've got big oil companies there. They have what now? Oh, yeah, here's their per capita GDP. But we do see, it's about over $8,000, right? 20 billion economy, 2.3 million population. But the 33% poverty rates, 28% unemployment. Would you say that's the impact of bad leadership that has, precipitated this kind of, military action?
Well, Gabon is actually under an IMF program. They are under an EFF, and they just went, the second and first review, and are hoping to get other disbursements. Right from the time that they sign up for this, IMF program, they've had 2 disbursements amounting to more than, $200 million. And this is a country that, in a year is able to export crude worth over, $3 billion. And so you are expecting that there should be some connection between the mineral resources that the country has and then development. But there have been complaints about, standard of living and inflation and all of those things. If you look at Gabon, for instance, Transparency International actually ran Gabon, I think somewhere around 140 for over 140 countries in terms of corruption. This is a country that many have said there is some sort of corruption going on in Gabon. You have a country where one family has ruled for more than 5 decades. And, if you look at the Gabon system, for instance, this is not a country that should be suffering. This is a country that is a member of OPEC. This is a country that is able to export more than $3 billion worth of crude every year. They have manganese, they have cocoa. And so you're expecting that once the Gabon economy begins to grow, you can see some effects on the people, but the people are not really feeling it. In the Sub-Saharan African space, there's one chorus going on, and the chorus is that people are now looking for hope. People do not have hope now. They've lost trust in government. Democracy is on the decline, and it's the same thing happening in Gabon. It's not different from what is happening in Niger, where they are a country that's rich in uranium, but see what is going on. The same thing happening in Gabon, where the country is able to actually get a lot of money, so a lot of resources, but you cannot really map that kind of development to the livelihood of the people. And so this is what is actually going on in the Sub-Saharan African, region, where military actions or takeovers are kind of being like the go-to measure when people want to actually change government. And Gabon, we're all expecting that after that election, they were going to stay on in that democratic, domain. But this current coup will actually leave them in such a difficult situation, and it's going to affect the economy really well. So yeah, Gabon, just like all other African countries, are very rich in terms of resources. Oil, there's gold, there's manganese, there's cocoa, but you are not able to map that kind of resources to the development and the livelihood of the people.
So Gabon, of course, an ex-colony of France. Emmanuel Macron visited Bongo back in March. I think that was generally seen as France's show of support to the administration. What do you think your response is? I was checking his Twitter. I didn't see any tweets from Macron. Do you think we'll get an official statement or anything from France? What do you think their position will be?
Well, for instance, Gabon is a member of the Commonwealth, and member countries are supposed to, uphold a certain standard when it comes to democracy. And once you have Gabon, going outside this arrangement, going outside this agreed principle, then you should know that, Commonwealth, France are all watching on. And France, for instance, they are losing their grip in terms of the Francophone countries, Gabon being the latest Francophone country to actually use military, intervention to say we do not want the current government anymore. But currently, this is a developing story, and we know that, for instance, if this continues, it's going to depend on the actions that the military are going to take. Are they going to take that enshrined position that the military forces in Niger have taken? They are saying that this is something that has been inspired by the entire, military forces in Gabon. So, for instance, in Niger, they've actually come out that they are going to, do a transition, process in the next, I think, 6 months or so. Is it going to be the same in Gabon? Is it going to be extended? Is the military going to revert back to democratic rule in the shortest possible time? If this is extended, if this is likened to what is happening in Niger, then we are probably going to see sanctions. We are probably going to see Commonwealth and other countries that have stakes in Gabon, for instance, like France, all coming out with different, sanctions. But this is a country that's, if you sample 3 people, almost, I think, one person is actually poor, and they are not really able to map the kind of resources that they have to their livelihood. And so let's wait and see. But the baseline factor is that this is something that's going across the West African and the Central African Republic, sub-region. And although there will be some sort of geopolitical background to this whole development, it's still a fresh and developing story, and we are probably not privy to the whole information, and it's still developing. And so we are actually looking at the military and what they are going to do in the next 3 to 4 weeks, if they are going to revert back to democratic rule, or are going to take an entrenched position like what we are seeing in Niger and then Burkina Faso.
Isaac, we're out of time, so I only have just one answer from you with a map looking at the history of coups on the African continent since 1952. Is the Sub-Saharan region officially unstable? Quick answer, yes or no?
Sub-Saharan region officially unstable. Quick answer, yes or no?
Well, it will be very, very difficult to say the Sub-Saharan African region is currently unstable. All these countries that have actually had coups are countries with different dynamics. And, it's also important to note that if the military decide to come into the scene, they come with different how do you call it, reasons. And it's the differences or the reasons are different across the Sub-Saharan African, region. For instance, in Ghana sits between, Ivory Coast, Togo, and then Burkina Faso. We've had Burkina Faso had about 2 coups. We've also had Togo had a failed coup. In Ivory Coast, there's some sort of, attempted coups and all of those things. But Ghana still is able to stay within, and we've had about 2 or 4 change in government. And so it will be difficult to declare the entire region as unstable or the entire region as one that has been overtaken by military forces. So it's important to actually analyze each of these countries as a different entity to all the other countries, and then look at the reasons why some of these the military are actually given in terms of why they have to take power and why they are not happy with the current situation.
Great stuff. And I see Elections in Ghana book right behind you there, so that's very pertinent as we have this discussion. Isaac Agyei, analyst with SBM Intelligence analyst, joining us from Accra. Thank you so much for the deep dive into the latest from Gabon, and we'll keep our viewers updated as those events unfold.